the actual law. It defines food, anything consumed by man or animal. So animals, pets, pet food is defined, protected under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Section 402, a food shall be deemed to be adulterated and thus prohibited if it is in whole or part the product of a diseased animal or an animal which has died other than by slaughter. But these are actual FDA policies. FDA policies come from administration. They go to the field representatives, and this is the FDA administration telling the field representatives what to do. No regulatory action will be considered for animal feed ingredients resulting from the ordinary rendering process, including those which have died other than by slaughter. That's a direct violation of federal law. Pet food consisting of diseased animals or animals which have died other than by slaughter will not ordinarily be actionable. And this is a fun one, especially since y'all are eating lunch. Any human food that is contaminated with roach or bird excretion, that's acceptable to be moved over into animal. The FDA tells the animal food and pet food industry, it's okay, go rob the bank. We're not going to prosecute. They have no authority to do that. They get away with this through this industry, rendering industry. It's a very secretive industry. The last media attention of this was from Van Smith in 1995, Baltimore City paper. You all have in your handout this complete article. This is some of the pictures of it. What this guy's holding in his hands is a common pet food ingredient called meat and bone meal. This was the first paragraph of that article. You can read this, it's horrible, but I emphasize dead dogs and cats from animal shelters. Rendered and become common pet food ingredients. This is from a 2004 report to the 110th Congress of the United States. The animal renderers convert dead animals and animal parts that otherwise would require disposal into a variety of products, pet food and even crayons. And the crayons part really gets me. My children are your all's age now, but when they were little, first thing a kid does with a crayon is stick it in their mouth. And it's got some pretty nasty things in it, some crayons. Renderers annually convert 47 billion pounds or more of raw material. Sources, this is the same congressional document. Sources for these materials include dead animals from farms, ranches, feedlots, animal shelters. In 2002, the FDA, under pressure, they say from practicing veterinarians, that the euthanizing drug pentobarbital was losing its effectiveness. So the FDA went in and tested many different brands of dog food only. They did not test cat food. And pulled it right off the store shelves, grocery stores, pet shops, and guess what they found in finished dog food? Pentobarbital. I don't have to tell you all what pentobarbital is. Why would pentobarbital be in dog food? The link between the pentobarbital and the dog food were these ingredients. The most common is animal fat. Now the FDA announced to the public there are no rendered dogs and cats in pet food. We did testing, they did species, source testing, trying to find DNA. The FDA announced, and you have all of this information in handouts too. The FDA stated the only 3 possible sources of pentobarbital could be euthanized horses, euthanized dogs, euthanized cats. Well, their testing, their DNA testing, found no dog DNA, no cat DNA, and no horse DNA. So their testing was totally inconclusive. To this day, there is no scientific proof or disproof that euthanized dogs and cats are not pet food ingredients. There is hope, however. New Zealand, I'm in communication with pet owners in New Zealand, and New Zealand is anal about mad cow disease. And they have developed a species source DNA testing to make sure that there are no cattle DNA in pet foods imported into the country. They don't want to take a chance on anything, any mad cow disease. They have said that the same testing methods could be applied to look for dog and cat DNA. And I suspect that New Zealand will do this testing, hopefully. Now the FDA also, after their finding of pentobarbital, they also tested dogs. They took beagles and fed them different levels of pentobarbital and determined that it's okay, it's safe for these dogs to consume pentobarbital in pet food. Now, backing up though, remember, if those foods immediately should have been recalled because they violated federal law, but they won't. So the FDA says it's safe. It's okay, they can eat pentobarbital in dogs. It's all right. Well, the Fish and Wildlife Department said, I don't think so. The Fish and Wildlife Department, at about the same time, released a report that over 100 golden bald eagles have died from consuming a pentobarbital euthanized carcass. Because of this Fish and Wildlife Department report, most states do not allow euthanized animals to be buried in landfills. Animal shelters that are holding on by the skin of their teeth just to survive, take care of, and feed animals cannot afford a crematory, nor even if they have one, few can afford to run it. They're very expensive to run. Los Angeles County euthanizes, I think, 3 million dogs and cats every year, simply because, most of them simply because they don't have a home. That is 3 million animals cannot be buried in a landfill. Nobody goes out and digs a hole for each one of them. They're rendered. Fish and Wildlife Department, rendering is not an acceptable way to dispose of pentobarbital-tainted carcass. The drug residues are not destroyed in the rendering process, so the tissues and byproducts may contain poison and can't be used, should not be used in animal feed. But the FDA says it's okay. All of these ingredients, byproduct meal, animal fat, meat and bone meal, meat meal, animal digest, could contain a euthanized animal. So when you go purchase your pet foods, the first thing, don't look at the fancy pictures, don't read any of the possible direct unqualified claims, flip it over and read the ingredients. Okay, that's going to tell you a great deal. All of these foods have one or more of those ingredients in them. The biggest thing now in the news is salmonella recalls. Okay? Feline Pride is a raw cat food that earlier this year had a salmonella recall. Well, the president of that company called me, Susan, I promise I did everything by the book. I don't understand. He felt like the FDA was setting him up, and he kept going on and on. I don't understand. I did everything. Well, so I called the USDA and tried to, find out. And the USDA representative told me every piece of meat coming out of a USDA-approved meat processing facility, USDA slaughterhouse, they assume it to be contaminated with salmonella. He told me salmonella is not our deal, that's the FDA's deal. So when you go in the grocery, every piece of meat that you pick up, the USDA assumes is contaminated with salmonella, which we think is what happened with this particular recall. The FDA's only demand for raw pet food manufacturers is if they use USDA approved meat. Well, we did, and it was contaminated with salmonella. And there's an easy resolve to this: electrolyzed water. This is a very interesting thing. Murray's Chicken is a chicken processing facility. Many chicken processing facilities use chlorine to kill the salmonella on the chicken that you eat and that goes into pet food. Electrolyzed water is adding electrical current to water, and it simply changes the molecular structure of the water. It kills salmonella, E. coli, the list goes on. Many hotels are now using simply electrolyzed water to clean in between guests. It's completely environmentally friendly. There's a version of the electrolyzed water that you can drink that there's research that even shows improves like kidney stone conditions. It's amazing, and it's so simple, but it's not being used. Dr. Rhonda Haven made a YouTube video. I highly recommend you to watch this. To pet owners, and this was his suggestions of how pet owners should deal with all these salmonella recalls. Wash your hands, okay. Keep your pet's food and treats in a separate area from your food. Don't prepare your pet's food in the same area, and definitely not with the same utensils. Keep pets off countertops. He obviously doesn't have a cat. And feed your pets as far away from the human food preparation as possible. So soon we're going to be feeding or preparing the food out in the garage and feeding them out in the backyard, or wearing our hazmat suit, feeding our pets. Dr.